Hi, this is Cameron back again with another Vinyl Finds video. This is number 50 at last. I've been away for a little while. I've been studying for a professional certification exam, so I haven't had a chance to listen to a lot of music until after I finished the exam a couple days ago. And I also haven't been buying music. And when I have had a chance, a little bit of free time, I've been listening to albums that I had picked up in previous weeks and hadn't had a chance to listen to. So it was a lot of catch-up time. Anyways, after the exam, I took the first opportunity in order to visit my local record store, and I did pick up some albums in the bargain bin that I thought might interest you. I've listened to most of them, so I can give a little bit of a comment about each of them. To start off with, I got for free because at my record store they always toss in one free album for every $5 you spend out of their bargain bin. I got J.T. Adams and the Men of Texas with Hearts of Flame. So I got this because it was one of the few albums that were in that bin that looked interesting, but also it had a really neat cover with a fiery background and a big cross on the front. So this is some religious music from the 60s, some spirituals, not really gospel-y, but more spirituals, I would say. Next up, I got a later album by an Australian singer-songwriter, a pop singer-songwriter, who wrote for musicals in the States and in the States. He also wrote songs for Melissa Manchester, Olivia Newton-John, other pop artists. I think Christopher Cross. I could be wrong there. But this is Peter Allen from Australia, and this is an album that came out in 1979 called I Could Have Been a Sailor. Now this was a tremendous find for $4. I got a 4-disc box set from the Book of the Month Club called American Folk Singers and Balladeers, the Classics Record Library, based on Vanguard materials. It has a little bit of problems with the box itself, but inside there's a great booklet. And in that booklet, there are the lyrics to all the songs on the 4 LPs. And it features lots of great artists like Joan Baez. It features Ian and Sylvia, Odetta, Weavers, Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry, Mississippi John Hurt. So there's some photos of the different artists. Eric Darling, Rooftop Singers. So lots of different music for albums. Get a real sense of the period, 1964, of where folk music was at. Tends to be a little bit more of the very left-wing sided, so I like it. I find it very interesting. People that are representing unions, people that are representing the grassroots people. So both black and white. It would have been good if there was a little bit more of the black singers, African American singers, but this is only Odetta was featured out of. Oh, and also Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and Mississippi John Hurt, but they only had one cut each on the album, whereas Odetta had a few. Next up, from Canada, a southern rock band from Canada, unusual. Anyways, the Cooper Brothers from 1979, Pitfalls of the Ballroom. This is their second album, and it actually had some radio-friendly songs. I'm just trying to remember if it was I Knew Her When I See Her or Show Some Emotion. It was either one of those two. Anyways, I recognized it right away when I heard it. Then comes an interesting album of Edison recordings from the mid and late 20s, I guess 1924 1924 to about 1928. This is called Vernon Dalhart, the first singing cowboy on records. And what I learned was that until the 1950s, he was the best-selling artist for one of his songs that sold 7 million copies. That was Prisoner's Song? No, I could be wrong there. Anyways, it was one of his earlier songs. Sold 7 million copies. So until the 1950s, that was the best-selling song ever. So Vernon Dalhart, I had never heard of him before, but he's an early country artist. And this collection came out in 1978. Now another album that came out probably from the 60s, I couldn't track down a date on it. Jean Devrait and his Afro drums, Exciting Voodoo, so this is exotica music. And this looks like this edition on Paris Records only came out in Canada through a drugstore chain, Rexall, and it came out on another label in the States. Okay, to add to my Latin American music collection, this is the third album I have now of Emmanuelle, Los Grandes Éxitos de Emmanuelle, so the big hits of Emmanuelle from Mexico, Balladeer, good quality. This came out in 1980. When I was living in the Dominican in the late 90s, you could hear Emmanuelle on the radio all the time. So he was a very famous artist in Latin America. Okay, next up, some bluegrass with a feminist edge. So feminist queer. Robyn Flower, Green Sneakers on Flying Fish. And as I've said in the past, I pick up anything I ever find on Flying Fish. So this came out in, let me just see, in 1982. Some Southern rock from 1986 with the big song Keep Your Hands to Yourself, Georgia Satellites. Artists I've seen live at our Folk Fest, Clive Brixton and Christine Collister, Home and Away, from 1987 on Cooking Vinyl label. So this is a folk album from UK, but Clive Brixton was part of a new wave band out of UK called Any Trouble, and I've got 3 of their albums. So I remember Cooking Vinyl coming out around 1987, the label, and everything on it was at least sort of cutting edge at the time. So I recommend anything that you see on Cooking Vinyl to pick it up. Okay, next up, some late classics, easy listening, Henry Mancini, music from the TV series The Mancini Generation. This is from 1972. Interesting photo of Henry Mancini when he was a young boy on his tricycle with his dog. The front cover. Some folk music during the folk revival. A little later, 1966, those singing, swinging, stomping, sensational Stonemans. And this is a family band, so the father, Pop Stoneman, had started in the 1920s as a recording artist, I believe 1925, and then here he is with his family doing some up-to-date sounds with the folk revival sounds in the mid-60s, 1966. They did college campuses and similar venues. Next up, as I said, I like to pick up everything on Flying Fish. Similarly, anything I find on Shanachie, I don't know how you pronounce it, Shanachie label. So in this case, they're doing World Music, Three Mustafas 3, Shopping from 1987. And I remember seeing these guys at our Folk Fest too. They're sort of they're a world beat band, but they pretend they're from the Balkans, but actually I imagine they're from the States or somewhere close by. Here we have Pete Townsend's younger brother, Simon Townsend, Sweet Sound, which I believe is his first album from 1983. He's only around 20 years old here. He had previously appeared in some of the Who, I think Quadrophenia, in the movie Quadrophenia, not Tommy. And then, of course, I saw him on tour with the Who during their 50th anniversary last year. I did miss when he did a solo date at our local Pyramid Cabaret. I should have gone to see just to catch him on his own. I heard good things about it, but I have to say I'm not as familiar with his music as I'd like to be. So this came out in 1983, Simon Townsend. And finally, this was a bit of a mistaken purchase. I thought for some reason I was getting a later Donna Washington reissue, and it turned out I got Donna Washington, so it was 60 cents at our Goodwill. It's called Going for the Glow. I haven't listened to this yet. It's from 1979. It's R&B, maybe into the disco territory, which I usually avoid, but I always said I'd explore it a little bit more. Rather than avoid it, and so here we go. I've got Donna Washington. I'll give it a try. As I said, I haven't listened to it yet. So that's it for this Vinyl Finds number 50. Please leave your comments below. I'm really interested in getting some feedback. Also pay attention to when I put out videos featuring my vinyl collection. I'm still partway through the letter A, and as I said, up to now I've decided to just show the whole variety of them, and as I warned, I had sold off a lot of my rock albums in the letter A, so it's really showing the rest of my collection with a little bit of rock in between. So check it out. I'll have another episode coming out very soon. And please subscribe. Look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.